بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. In the last session we talked about the mother of Imam al-Mahdi and the birth, the sacred birth of Imam al-Mahdi al-Muntadhar Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu al-Sharif, who was born on the 15th of Sha'ban in the year 255 after Hijrah. Of course, Kulayni in his Al-Kafi, he mentions one hadith that the Imam was born in year 256 after Hijrah. However, this, from those who have analyzed this and studied this, they say this is a mistake because it was widely known and widely accepted that the Imam was born in year 255 after Hijrah. And this happens in the transmission of hadith. Sometimes a hadith, there's a slight change in the hadith. For example, Kulayni in his Al-Kafi, he mentions that the Prophet was born on the 12th of Rabi', while the majority Shia opinion is that he was born on the 17th of Rabi' al-Awwal. Kulayni sided with the Sunni opinion that he was born on the 12th. So this happens sometimes, and of course these books of hadith, it's not written by a ma'soom. That means this gives us, the responsibility to go and do research. We have to go and study, we have to compare, we have to see what are the different events that took place during the time and all of the matters that occurred. And then we try to figure out, what the truth is. So Imam al-Mahdi, according to the Shias, he was born. Sunnis, they say he was not born yet. Why do they say that? Because his birth was a secret. Because Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, as we will come to find out, inshallah, Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, he didn't show Imam al-Mahdi to everyone. He only showed him to the very close of the Shia, the very close followers. They were the ones who saw the Imam al-Mahdi. So why is there a discrepancy? Why is there some that say he wasn't born yet? Because the official knowledge during the time by the government, by those who were in power, is that Imam al-Hasan al-Askari died without having a son. So that's why that was one of the reasons. Yes, sister.
But couldn't they have discovered, when he was buried, we know that the Imam he buried his dad.
So it became known later on. It became known later on that, especially with the Shi'as, that no, this is his son and he does have a son. Akhbaran tishrat. People started hearing more about him. But for some people, they didn't know that the Imam was born because his birth was hidden. His birth was a private birth, just like the birth of Musa. And even his mother, she did not know from the hadith that we read last week. Even his mother, she was not aware until hours before the birth, until moments before the birth. That's when she became aware. So one of the main duties of, as we mentioned, of Imam al-Hadi especially and Imam al-Hasan al-Askari is to, from one aspect, tell people that I have a son, that al-Mahdi, and talk about al-Mahdi, especially Imam al-Hasan al-Askari. This was one of his main objectives and duties. And the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt, this is something very interesting. The Imams of the Ahlul Bayt, they were telling people about al-Mahdi. And at the same time, you have scholars like Bukhari and Muslim and Tirmidhi and Abu Dawood al-Sajistani and Ibn Majah al-Qazwini, who were living at the same time as the Ghaibah. They're narrating a hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi about the Mahdi. So Bukhari died in year 256 after Hijrah. So Bukhari, he died 1 year after the birth of Imam al-Mahdi. So Bukhari is a known scholar during his time. He's mentioning hadith regarding Imam al-Mahdi.
So he didn't know that Imam al-Mahdi was born?
No, he doesn't know about the birth, but He's talking about, the hadith of Rasulullah that is narrated by Bukhari, that at the end of time, the earth will be ruled by Al-Mahdi. He's the 12th of my children. Ismuhu ismi. His name is my name. And even some hadith that say he's from the children of Imam al-Hussein, the 9th of them. Muslim, in Sahih, they call it Sahih Muslim, he died year 260, the same year as the death of Imam al-Hasan al-Askari. Ibn Majah al-Qazwini, these are all, they call these as-Sihah as-Sit. Ibn Majah al-Qazwini died year 273. Abu Dawood al-Sajistani died year 275. And At-Tirmidhi died year 279. So they're all during the Ghayb al-Sughra, except Al-Bukhari, who died during the life of the Imamah of Imam al-Hasan al-Askari alayhi salam, and after the birth of Imam al-Mahdi. So this is something interesting. The Sunni scholars, they're mentioning a hadith regarding the Imam from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. And at the same time, you have the Imams of the Ahl al-Bayt, they're telling people that Al-Mahdi is from us, he's from the son of Al-Askari, and all of this news. So you could imagine that at that time, there is a lot of knowledge and information and talk about someone by the name of Al-Mahdi. So what is that going to do with the authorities? The government? The Abbasi government, what are they going to do? They're going to naturally be afraid of Al-Mahdi, because his akhbar, that what we know about him is that he will remove evil and he will remove injustice. Those who were in power, they knew that they were wrong. They knew that they were taking position of power wrongfully, and they knew that the Imams of the Ahl Bayt deserved the power. So they were afraid of Imam al-Mahdi. And that's why you have Imam al-Hadi, he's brought all the way to Samarra. That's why you have Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, he's under house arrest in Samarra. And as we mentioned when we were talking about Imam al-Askari, every week they come and they summon Imam al-Askari. Every week he has to go and see the Khalifa and the Wazir, because they want to know what's going on in the house of Imam al-Hasan al-Askari alayhi salam. So Imam al-Mahdi, he was born year 255 on the 15th of Sha'ban, 1 month into one of the Khulafa al-Abbasiyin by the name of Al-Muhtadi al-Abbasi. Al-Muhtadi al-Abbasi, one month into the rule of Al-Muhtadi, Imam al-Mahdi was born, because he came in Rajab, Al-Muhtadi, and Imam al-Mahdi was born in Sha'ban. Al-Muhtadi ruled for 1 year, and then, as we mentioned when we were talking about Imam al-Jawad and Imam al-Hadi, that there were Turks, they were related to Al-Abbasis, because one of the Khulafa, his mother, Al-Mu'tasim, his mother was a Turkish lady. So he came and he brought all these Turks, and they started controlling the Khalifa. They were like a gang. So they started controlling him. So what these Turkish officers, military officers, they came and they removed Al-Muhtadi al-Abbasi from power, and they placed Al-Mu'tamid al-Abbasi. Now Al-Mu'tamid al-Abbasi, he ruled for a very long time. He ruled for 23 years into the death. So 1 year into the life of Imam al-Mahdi, he began to rule, and for 23 years. So 23 subtract 5, you have 19 years into the life of Imam al-Mahdi. Right? Is it 19? 18 years into the life of Imam al-Mahdi. So the first 18 years of the life of Imam al-Mahdi, Al-Mu'tamid al-Abbasi, he's the one who's ruling. And into the imamah, not into the life, into the imamah of Imam al-Mahdi. So Al-Mu'tamid al-Abbasi, he was the ruler. Now the Imam, during that time, after Imam al-Mahdi was born, Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, he ordered some of his closest companions, Uthman ibn Sa'id, who became the first deputy of Imam al-Mahdi, the first of the Nuwab of Imam al-Mahdi. He was also the Wakil of Imam al-Hasan al-Askari. And another man by the name of Abu Amr, to slaughter sheep and distribute meat. When a baby is born, what do we have? We do aqiqah. So it says, روي عن أبي جعفر العمري رضي الله عنه قال لما ولد السيد عليه السلام. And keep in mind, they don't call him by his name. لما ولد السيد Al-Hujjah Al-Qa'im. They give him these names. لما ولد السيد عليه السلام, when the Sayyid was born, قال أبو محمد عليه السلام. Abu Muhammad is Imam al-Askari. ابعثوا إلي أبو عمرو فبعث إليه. He says, bring me Abu Amr. So they brought him Abu Amr. فقال له اشتري 10,000 رطل خبزا و10,000 رطل لحما. I want you to buy 10,000 pounds of bread. Ratl is a pound. 10,000 pounds of bread and 10,000 pounds of meat. وفرقه واحسبه, and distribute it and set it in its own. So, and then he قال على بني هاشم وعق عنه بكذا وكذا شات. So distribute this to Bani Hashim in Medina, all over, and the poor people in the city, and do slaughter many sheep. Slaughters عق عنه كذا وكذا شات, several sheep. It's mustahab to slaughter one, but if you could do more, then it's better. So they distribute that, and this was one of the ways that Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, he tells some of the khawas, some of his close people, that I have been given a son. This was one of his ways. So the news of the birth of Imam al-Mahdi began to spread amongst the close, very close companions of Imam al-Hasan al-Askari. As we will later on come to discover, that the brother of Imam al-Askari, Ja'far, who is known as Ja'far al-Kadhab, from the hadith, he was shocked by the birth of Imam al-Mahdi. So even the uncle of Imam al-Mahdi, he didn't know. Or he was acting like he didn't know. That's something that some scholars, they say maybe he knew and he was acting like he didn't know. But most likely, Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, he only brought the khawas, the very close companions. And we will see several hadith that a man, he's a khadim, he's a servant in the house of Imam al-Askari. He says, I never knew about he's always coming in and out in the house. But he says, suddenly I saw a young child at age 3. So meaning that he didn't know of a child until 3 years into the life of Imam al-Mahdi. So the news spread, and now Imam al-Mahdi is born, but Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, he has two main duties. One is he has a religious obligation to tell people, iblagh. He has to let people know that the Imam after me is my son. The Hujjah has to be delivered. So this is from one aspect. He has to tell his companions and prove to them that he is his son, so that people won't be lost after the death of Imam al-Askari. And second, his also a very important duty, he has to protect the life of Imam al-Mahdi. And as we mentioned, at that time there's a lot of talk in the Sunni circles, in the Shia circles, that al-Mahdi, he is the 12th, and he is the successor of the Prophet, and his name is the same name as Rasulullah, and he is the 9th from the children of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. So all of the eyes are on the house of Imam al-Hasan al-Askari. So what did the Imam do? Some of the tactics of Imam al-Hasan al-Askari to protect the life of Imam al-Mahdi was what? One is Imam al-Askari has deputies. He has nuwab. He has wukala. And this is something that we see became very apparent from the life of Imam al-Hasan al-Askari. Now people, instead of coming and giving the khums immediately to the Imam, they go and they give it to the na'ib of the Imam. So this was happening from the time of Imam al-Jawad, from the time of Imam al-Hadi, Imam al-Askari, and then Imam al-Mahdi became something that was standard. Yes, sister?
The Musa al-Qazim, when he was in prison,
he also had wakala, yes. Most of the Imams, they did, because they didn't have the freedom to interact with people. Especially Imam al-Hadi and Imam al-Askari, they're in Samarra. Samarra is a small town, and it's a military town, and the Khalifa is there, so the Shias don't have the freedom to come and go. Like for example in Baghdad, they had more freedom. And here we will come to notice that Imam al-Mahdi, one of the first things he did after the death of his father is that he placed his wakil in Baghdad. The Nuwab of Imam al-Mahdi, they're buried in Baghdad. He appoints him, he tells him, go to Baghdad. Baghdad is a bigger city, The Shias could come and go. The authorities are not there. The Khalifa is not there to watch who came and went. So the Na'ib of the Imam, the deputy, Uthman ibn Sa'id, after the death of the Imam, the death of Imam al-Askari, he goes to Baghdad. And we will come to talk about that later, inshallah. So the Imam has Nuwab. Another is that the Imam does not have a big social circle. As we mentioned, when we were talking about Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, he tells his companions, if you see me in the street, don't say salam to me. Don't point at me. Because the Imam, he doesn't want all the eyes and the attention on him. And also, what helped cover up the birth of Imam al-Mahdi from the authorities, other than the fact that his mother, his birth was something that was a secret, there was an internal conflict that was taking place within the Abbasi government. Al-Muhtadi, he was removed 1 year into the birth of Imam al-Mahdi. This caused conflict within the Abbasi government. Imagine, a family, a royal family, that one, he comes and he removes the other. It's going to cause conflict. So that's going to take their attention away from Imam al-Mahdi and the eyes being on Imam al-Mahdi. And another is, there was a rebellion, a very big rebellion that took place in Iraq, in Basra, around the same year of the birth of Imam al-Mahdi. And this is something that historians talk about. It's called Al-Zanj rebellion. Zanj, it means the black. This is why they call the black people Zanji sometimes. So this is called the Black Rebellion because there were slaves that were brought from East Africa. Black slaves. The government, they would come and they would bring them, they would enslave them. Or I don't know how they would bring them, and there was marshlands in Iraq. Even right now, there's in south of Iraq, there's an area, it's called Al-Ahwar. It's marshlands. Marshlands. There's water. So the marshlands, it needed workers and farmers to be working so that the land will be fertile and it would be able to produce crops. So what they did was they brought these people from Africa, and they brought them. And this is some of the injustice that was taking place. We think that it only took place here in the plantations in the south. No, this was taking place during the time of the Abbasis. They brought them, and then there was a rebellion because of the harsh work conditions that they were placed in. There was a rebellion not only of the slaves, but some of the freemen. They also rebelled against the government. So they say that this was one of the bloodiest rebellions that the Abbasi regime faced at that time. It's called Al-Zanj rebellion. Al-Zanj rebellion. This took place during the year of the birth of Imam al-Mahdi. So because this took place, that kind of distracted the government. They were watching the house of Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, but several things happened. Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, he had his own tactics, and then they had their own internal conflict. They had a rebellion. Several things happened that they missed the birth of the Imam for the first 5 years of the Imam. So no one knows about the birth of the Imam. Here, Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, he would bring, and of course there was an i'jaz, there was a miraculous aspect to it. But the Imam, he brings his companions, the close ones, and he tells them, look at this is my son, this is your Imam after me, this is your Khalifa, this is the one who's after me. So he says, وَرُوِيَ أَنَّهُ وَرَدَ مِنْ أَبِي مُحَمَّدْ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامِ عَلَى أَحْمَدِ بن إسحاق كتاب. Ahmad ibn Ishaq is one of the great Shias, a great scholar at the time. A letter from the Imam, he goes to Ahmad ibn Ishaq. وإذا فيه مكتوب بخط يده عليه السلام الذي كان يرد به التوقيعات عليه وفيه. So Ahmad ibn Ishaq, he knew the signature of the Imam because the Imam would correspond with him, and he knows the handwriting of Imam al-Askari and the signature of the Imam. He tells him in a letter, ولد المولود فليكن عندك مستورا. He says the Mawlud, the son, my son has been born, but keep this a private matter. وعن جميع الناس مكتوما, and keep this something private. Don't talk about it to anyone. فإنا لم نظهر عليه إلا الأقرب لقرابته والمولى لولايته. And he says, we don't reveal this matter except to the close ones for how close they are to us, and the mawla, the muwali, the one who follows us, for his wilaya, because of the wilaya that he has with us. أحببنا إعلامك ليسرك الله به كما سرنا به والسلام. He says, I wanted to tell you, so Allah makes you happy with this good news just as it made us happy with this good news, wassalam. So this is why we celebrate the Shias, we celebrate the birth of Imam al-Mahdi. Compared to the births of all of the Imams, the birth of Imam al-Mahdi is one of those days that we go a little bit more, and we have to go a little bit more in celebrating, because it's the day that the Imam was very happy, and it's a disputed thing. So in order to prove our faith, our wilayah with the Imam, we celebrate it. Yes, sister.
Don't you think, Sayyid, also because the 15th of Sha'ban is recognized by the other school of thought as a good day?
Yes, it's like Laylatul Qadr.
It's easier for us to celebrate.
Yes.
Because if you celebrate on the other days, they will like...
It would probably, yes, it would raise suspicion.
Yeah.
So the Shias, they would celebrate on that day. Ahmad ibn Ishaq, the same man, he received a letter. Later on, once Imam al-Mahdi was a little bit older, before the death of his father, he comes to visit Imam al-Askari. Because he's one of the close companions, he comes, he has people deliver khums, he has masail, something. So he comes and he sees the Imam. So he says at a later time, he came and Imam al-Hasan al-Askari told me, oh Ahmad, do you know that at any single time there's an Imam? Imam al-Hasan al-Askari is trying to tell him that there's an Imam at all times. And this is a good argument for us today as well. So he says, yes, of course, I know that because God is just, because Allah is adil, then at any single time there has to be a representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is something that is agreed upon by Shia and Sunni scholars. They all accept this. So he said, then I asked the Imam, who is the Imam after you? So he said, this young child of mine, he is the Imam after me. And he went into a room, and then he came back carrying a child, a 3-year-old child, on his shoulder. And he says, I saw his face like the moon. His face was very beautiful like the moon. He was carried on the shoulder of his father, Imam al-Hasan al-Askari. And then he says, he is your Imam, and he is the one who will establish justice on earth after it has been filled with oppression. So Ahmad ibn Ishaq, now he just saw and he knows, but he tells him, can I see a sign? Can I see something to prove that he is the Imam? So he says, as soon as I asked that, the young child, he began to speak. The young child began to speak. He says, أنا بقية الله في الأرض والمنتقم من أعدائه ولا تطلب أثرا بعد عين يا أحمد بن إسحاق. He says, أنا بقية الله. I am the remaining proof of Allah on earth. وَالْمُنْتَقِمْ مِنْ أَعْدَائِهِ. I will be the one who seeks vengeance from the enemies of God. وَلَا تَطْلُبْ أَثَرًا بَعْدَ عَيْنٍ. Don't go and try to seek another proof after you have seen me. Oh, Ahmad ibn Ishaq. So he says, Ahmad ibn Ishaq, he says, I left, but I was very happy. I was so happy that I got to see the savior of mankind, the savior of humanity. So he says, I came back the next day, and I tell the Imam, thank you very much for honoring me and allowing me to see your son, who is Al-Mahdi Al-Muntadhar, the one who Rasulullah spoke about, who Amir al-Mu'mineen, who Imam Sadiq, all the Imams they spoke about. So the Imam, later on, he tells him he's going to be in a ghaibah. He's going to be in an occultation. And people will have to wait and they will be tested. So he says, I tell him, how long is this ghaibah going to be? How long is this ghaibah going to be? Is it going to be a very long one? He says, أي وربي حتى يرجع عن هذا الأمر أكثر القائلين به. Yes, it's going to be so long that so many people who believe in Imam al-Mahdi and they say about Imam al-Mahdi, they're going to go back. Some people, they lose faith. Some people in times of difficulty, this happens to some of the Shia. They say, yes, Imam al-Mahdi. Then at one point they sit and they think, where's the justice? When is he coming? يرجع عن هذا الأمر أكثر القائلين به فلا يبقى إلا من أخذ الله عز وجل عهده بولايتنا وكتب في قلبه الإيمان وأيده بروح منه. Most of the people they're going to leave, except who? The one who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, فلا يبقى إلا من أخذ الله عز وجل عهده بولايتنا. Someone who has a covenant with Allah in the wilayah of the Ahl Bayt. This is why we ask Allah to keep us on the Sirat al-Mustaqim, to give us that ahad, that covenant with Allah. Those who killed Imam al-Hussein, some of them most of them they knew who Imam al-Hussein was. They knew who Amir al-Mu'mineen was, they fought him. So some people they change. We have to ask Allah al-Thabat. We have to ask Allah husn al-Aqibah. وَكَتَبَ فِي قَلْبِهِ الْإِيمَانِ. The iman is written in this person's heart. وَأَيَّدَهُ بِرُوحٍ مِّنْهِ. Someone who's supported by the ruh, that the angel Allah sends to support. And then he says, Ya Ahmad ibn Ishaq, أمر من أمر الله يا أحمد بن إسحاق أمر من أمر الله وسر من سر الله وغيب من غيب الله فخذ ما آتيتك واكتمه وكن من الشاكرين تكن معنا في عليين. He says, Ya Ahmad ibn Ishaq, Amr min Amr Allah. This is one of the matters of God. And Sir min Sir Allah. This is a secret from God's secret. Wa Ghayb min Ghayb Allah. And this is one of the Ghayb, the unseen, from the unseens of God. فَخُذْ مَا أَتَيْتُكَ. Take what I have told you. وَاكْتُمْهُ. And keep it concealed, keep it secret. وَكُن مِنَ الشَّاكِرِينَ. And be thankful. تَكُن مَعَنَا فِي عِلِّيِّينَ. You will be from amongst the Illiyin. So here we see that this close companion, he felt lucky that he got to see the Imam. Meaning that not a lot of the Shi'as saw the Imam. Another very important method that the Imam alayhi salam used to protect the life of the Imam. Let me answer this question. Sayyid, when Imam al-Mahdi spoke as a child, did his voice sound like a man or like a child? Most probably sounded like a child. It's natural to sound like a child. So this is, I believe that's how it probably sounded like. But of course, we mentioned last time that the Imam in one hadith he grows in a day or in a month what the people grow in a year. So the Imam in one hadith we understand that he would grow faster than others. So another very important method, something that the Imam and the Imams of the Ahl Bayt they say, and we find this in the hadith. And some even act upon it today because they think it still applies, and I don't think it applies now. Some scholars they say this was only during the life of the Imam, that it's haram to say the name of Imam al-Mahdi. Have you seen this hadith? We have hadith that it says it's haram to say the name. That's why the majority when we talk about him, we don't say his first name. His first name is the name of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. We don't say that. So he's known, even by the Imams, he's known as Al-Hujjah, Baqiyatullah, Sahibukum. This is why we call him Sahib al-Zaman. He tells him, Hada Sahibukum. Al-Mahdi. So these are some of the ways that the Imams would describe him. They wouldn't mention his name because they didn't want his name to be circulated in the letters and here and there. The authorities, if they get a hold of the letter, then they will definitely know that he has been born. But when they say As-Sayyid, this is going to, the Khalifa, if they get a hold of this letter, they're not going to find out. And we have this a lot. During the times of heavy taqiyya, that the Imams and the followers of the Imams, they had to practice, you find some of the names of the Imams, they're not mentioned. For example, during the time of Imam al-Kadhim, if you read Al-Kafi, one of the names of Imam Musa al-Kadhim is Al-Alim, or As-Sayyid, or Al-Abd al-Saleh. Because they can't say Musa ibn Ja'far. There's authorities. So they say Al-Alim, Al-Sayyid, Al-Abd al-Salih. So same with the name of the Imam. We know him, the followers, they would know him through his title. Al-Hujjah, Al-Sayyid, Al-Sahib. Yes, brother.
I've heard one, I don't remember where, but they said that one wisdom behind this is that now the most common name in the world is Muhammad. So now even if the Imam, he's just regularly asked, well, what's your name? And he says what his name
He says
is.
what his name
No
is.
one would really have a second thought, and so he can blend in.
Yes, at that time it wasn't as a common name as it is now. So that's why scholars say right now, if you say his name, it's not going to be. It's not that those hadith do not apply. But it was haram. It was haram for those companions to mention his name. Imam al-Askari, he says, don't mention his name. So here, this is why, as a result of all of these precautionary methods that the Imams, they took, and especially Imam al-Askari, a lot of people didn't know of the birth of the Imam. This is why in a hadith, Uthman ibn Sa'id, now this might be a fabricated hadith, Uthman ibn Sa'id, he's the one who was the first na'ib of the Imam. He says the Imam died without a son. So maybe this was, or the Imam doesn't have a son. So maybe this was either a fabricated hadith or it's a weak hadith, but this is a hadith that exists. So this is why the reason some today they say that, Imam al-Askari doesn't have a son, because officially, what was officially accepted at the time is that he didn't have a son. Imagine, I have a son and no one knows about him. The authorities, he doesn't have a social security number, he doesn't have anything, there's nothing is documented. So if people doubt that I have a son, you don't blame them sometimes, because they didn't see. So a lot of people, they didn't see at that time. Later on, the Shias, they came to believe in the Imam because of the several proofs and the scholars that they saw. But in order to preserve the life of the Imam during those 5 years in the house of Imam al-Askari, only a few people knew. We have some hadith of some companions, they come and they see the Imam. For example, on the 3rd day after the birth of Imam al-Mahdi, Imam al-Askari brought him to some of his companions. وَرُوِيَ عَنْ طَرِيف أَبِي نَصْرَ الْخَادِمِ. This man, he's a khadim, and a servant in the house of the Imam. His name is Abi Nasr al-Khadim. قال دخلت على صاحب الزمان عليه السلام وهو في المهد. He says, I entered on Sahib al-Zaman while he was in the cradle. في المهد. فقال لي علي بالصندل الأحمر. He speaks to the man 3 days after his birth. He tells him, bring me a sandal al-ahmar. Sandal is a piece of wood. They used to use it, maybe it could be used as a spice or something. A sandal al-ahmar. I looked it up. I didn't know what it was, but it's a piece of wood or something. So he says, علي بالصندل الأحمر فأتيت به فقال أتعرفني. So I brought it to him. And he says, do you know me? So imagine a 3-year-old is speaking to this man. Do you know me? فقلت نعم. قال من أنا? He says, who am I? قلت أنت سيدي وابن سيدي. You are my master and the son of my master. فقال ليس عن هذا سألتك. This is not what I meant when I was asking you. فقلت فسر لي. So tell me what it is. فقال أنا خاتم الأوصياء وبي يرفع الله عز وجل البلاء عن أهلي وشيعتي. He says, I am خاتم الأوصياء. I am the seal of the أوصياء. Rasulullah is خاتم الأنبياء. The أوصياء, starting with Amir al-Mu'mineen, he is the last, the seal. وبي يرفع الله عز وجل البلاء عن أهلي وشيعتي. And through me, Allah will remove the bala, the calamity, from my family and my Shi'as, my followers. We ask Allah to hasten His reappearance. They say that the last time, 40 days before the death of Imam al-Askari, so Imam al-Mahdi is 5 years old now, 40 days before the death of Imam al-Askari, Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, he invited 40 of his companions into his house. 40 men. He brought them, he gathered them in the house. Muhammad ibn Uthman was there, meaning the son of Uthman ibn Sa'id. Muhammad ibn Uthman, he became the one after Uthman ibn Sa'id. Muawiyah ibn Hakim, Muhammad ibn Abi Ayyub ibn Nuh. These are some of the names of the big Shi'as at that time. He brings out Imam al-Mahdi. And he says, هَذَا إِمَامُكُم مِّن بَعْدِي وَخَلِيفَتِي عَلَيْكُمْ. This is your Imam after me and my Khalifa upon you. أَطِيعُوهُ وَلَا تَتَفَرَّقُوا مِن بَعْدِي فَتَهْلَكُوا فِي دِينِكُمْ. Obey him and do not be divided. After me, you will lose your religion. أَمَّا إِنَّكُمْ. I got disconnected from the Zoom. أَمَّا إِنَّكُمْ لا ترونه بعد يومكم هذا. He says you're not going to see him after this day. You're not going to see him. Meaning the Imam, he tells them, you're not going to see Imam Al-Hasan Al-Askari anymore. I don't know why this disconnected. There are people online. And this is mentioned in Ikmal al-Din by Shaykh al-Saduq. Okay, since it disconnected, it's not going back on anymore. This is going to be a good place to stop. And inshallah, we will, so that they don't miss the remaining class. And in the next session, we're going to be...
It's still recording because it's happened to me before. You're fine.
It says disconnected.
Yeah,
the whole page is gone of Zoom.
Is gone?
Yes.
Oh,
I don't know why is that.
probably someone else somewhere connected. If you just sign in again, then it'll disconnect.
It's not even showing me that page. Let me see. Just a second. Okay, it went in. Let's see. I apologize. There's a problem with the internet.
If you want, you can connect to my hotspot.
I tried to connect with my phone's. Okay, I'm just gonna stop here because there's a lot to cover as well.
I think this one is still recording too, right? Yeah, so you could.
Should I just keep going? Okay. So the death of this was going on until 40 days. 40 days until the 40 days before the death of Imam al-Hasan al-Askari. Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, he fell ill. He dies on the 8th of Rabi' al-Awwal. The 8th of Rabi' al-Awwal in the year 260. He fell ill in the first day of Rabi' al-Awwal. And he died at 29 years old. So as soon as Imam al-Hasan al-Askari gets sick, what happens? The Grand Wazir and the Khalifa find out. How? Because they poisoned him. So they know that he's ill. They know that he's sick. And as soon as they find out, what do? They send doctors, they send people to be in the house of the Imam so that they know what's going on exactly when the Imam is dying in his house. They wanted to monitor the house of Imam al-Hasan al-Askari alayhi salam. So because they wanted to, can you log in with your phone?
You want me to log into Zoom?
Yeah, on that page, yes. On the development.
This history and development course, right?
Yes. At least so they'll hear. So Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, when he got ill, the Khalifa and the Wazir, they all brought their guards and their soldiers and their doctors supposedly to help, to be with the Imam. But why did they do that? Why did they want to be in the house of Imam al-Hasan al-Askari when he's dying? To monitor the house. They say that 15 men were brought in the house of Imam al-Askari. And because they all know that he's supposed to have a son. How is he an Imam if he doesn't have a son? This was one of the things that they used against the Imam al-Rida. They say, how are you an Imam when you don't have a son? So they believe that he has a son. So here they bring him and they say that during the moment of the death,
Just video closed.
yeah, it's okay. They say that during the moment of the death of Imam al-Askari, Imam al-Askari, he was able to get up from one of the rooms and he goes into another room. He goes into another room and there he did his wudu and he was with Narjis, his wife, or Sayqal, another name she has is Sayqal, and Imam al-Mahdi, and he does wudu and he passes away next to Imam al-Mahdi. So he was able to leave those people. The house probably has several rooms. You're logged in? Okay.
Is there only one person?
Okay, there were several. They probably left because... And then Imam al-Askari, he passed away next to Imam al-Mahdi. Now, once Imam al-Askari passes away, it's officially known in Samarra that the Imam has passed away. And the Khalifa, he prepares a funeral for the Imam. And Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, there were two salahs that were led over his body. One was the public salah, where the Khalifa and the Wazir, they were all gathered. And in that one, the Khalifa, he came and he revealed the face of the Imam, and he tells people, see, he died a natural death, and there was nothing, and here are these doctors here and there, and there's nothing wrong with him. And then the Khalifa, or the son of Al-Mutawakkil, he leads the prayers. But before that, this is when they brought the body of the Imam outside the house, so that the Khalifa, he sees him. Before he left the house, there was another salah that took place. And that was the salah that we oftentimes hear about, that Imam al-Mahdi, he comes and he tells Ja'far, he tells him, move, I pray on the body of my father. That's what happened. So the public one, it was led by the brother of the Khalifa, and he reveals the face of the Imam. He says no one kills him. He tried to cover up his crime. But the private one is the important one that we talk about. And that was before they brought the body of the Imam outside in public, where there were hundreds and thousands of people gathered. They have the body of Imam al-Hasan al-Askari. The ghusl has just been done. The kafan has just been done. And they have the body on somewhere in the house. So Ja'far ibn Ali, who is known as Ja'far al-Kadhab, the brother of Imam al-Hasan al-Askari. This man, he tried to take the position of Imam al-Hasan al-Askari. Because Imam al-Hasan al-Askari has a social position. The Shias, they come and they bring him khums. He has respect in the eyes of so many people. So he wanted that position. So what he does is he steps up forward and he announces that he is the Imam, that he is the Khalifa, and he is the Imam after Imam Al-Hasan al-Askari. Now what is said about, and I was shocked to read this, but they say that he used to drink, he used to do things that were very inappropriate, things that were wrong. And even Imam al-Hadi, he says that he's astray. Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, of course, several times he was imprisoned with Imam al-Hasan al-Askari. Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, several times he tried to help him. But this man, he was going through issues. And this is why he's known as Ja'far al-Kadhab, Ja'far the liar. And when we talked about Imam al-Sadiq, Imam Zayn al-Abidin, he mentions a hadith. He says Ja'far, and he says, and there's going to be another Ja'far who's going to put the life of Al-Hujjah in danger by claiming that he is the Imam and he is the Khalifa. Of course, I was reading that this man, Ja'far, later on, during the minor occultation, Imam al-Mahdi forgave him. And Imam al-Mahdi tells him, I forgive you just as what Yusuf, how he forgave his brothers. And maybe he changed his life. We don't know what happened. But during that day, the day of the martyrdom of Imam al-Hasan al-Askari and the following days after, he caused a lot of problems, as we will come to notice. So the first thing he did is he tried to lead the prayer. He came and he stood to lead the salah. Suddenly, a young 5-year-old child comes and grabs him by his sleeve and he tells him, move, O uncle, I am the one who leads the prayer over my father. And Imam al-Mahdi led the prayer in front of those who were there, Muhammad ibn Uthman, Uthman ibn Sa'id, and so those very close ones who were in the house of the Imam. They say that Ja'far, he was in shock. And this is why some say that he didn't know about Imam, because he was very shocked, but he didn't say anything like, no, I'm the one. Imam al-Mahdi led the prayer, and then Imam al-Mahdi goes and he hides and they don't see him, and they take the janazah of Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, they take it out of the house. Once they take it out, then there you have the official prayer. Now here, Imam al-Mahdi, he could have led the prayers. He could have led the prayers privately on his father in a way that no one was there. But Imam al-Mahdi, he led the prayers in front of Ja'far al-Kadhab, in front of others, so that Ja'far al-Kadhab does not come and announce he's the Khalifa, and this will bring astray a lot of the Shias, and it will cause a lot of people, because the close the close wukala of Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, they were there and they were allowing Ja'far to go and lead the prayer. You know, Uthman ibn Sa'id and those others, they didn't see it as a problem that Ja'far is going to lead the prayer. Either they didn't know what to do, they didn't want to put the life of Imam al-Mahdi in danger, they didn't want to do anything. They said, let's let things play out. But then suddenly even they were shocked that, because they hadn't seen Imam al-Mahdi in such a long time, they just saw him when he was a baby. Now suddenly they come and they see him, he moves his uncle and he leads the prayer. And this was something that kept the Shias united, the Ithna Asharis. And this is why we believe that after anyone who believes in Imam al-Rida from the Shias, they did not dispute over the Imams. So those who believed in Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, they all moved on to believe in Imam al-Mahdi. There was no division after that. So Ja'far, he claimed several times, he claimed imamah. He writes a letter to Ahmad ibn Isa. Remember Ahmad ibn Isa, that great scholar that the Imam writes him a letter and then the Imam brings him. He writes to him a letter telling him that I am the Khalifa of Imam al-Hasan al-Askari. He was doing this because he wanted dunya, he wanted the khums and the power and the prestige. So Ja'far tried many times to take the Khilafah. Now, this is a very important event that took place on the day of the martyrdom of Imam al-Hasan al-Askari. So Imam al-Mahdi has just led the prayer, they've taken the janazah out. Maybe several hours later, a group of people, Shias, they come all the way from Qom. And they're carrying their khums and the zakat and they're carrying all of that to deliver it to Imam al-Hasan al-Askari. Because the Shias, they would send it with a few people and they would tell them, go and deliver it. So they're entering into Samarra. Suddenly they see that there's the janazah of the Imam and there's a procession, a funeral procession, and Imam al-Hasan al-Askari has died. So they say, who should we give it to? They go, they look around next to the house of the Imam. They see Ja'far. Ja'far tells them, what do you want here? They say, we're looking for the one who is after Al-Hasan al-Askari. We want to deliver an amana. We want to deliver a trust to him. He tells them, give it to me. Give it to me. They tell him, we need proof. We are entrusted to deliver this amana. We need proof. He tells them, no, I am the Khalifa. Not the Khalifa. I am the Imam after Al-Hasan al-Askari. They tell him, Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, we used to go to him. He used to tell us how much we have in the bag before we even show it to him. And who did it come from? For example, Ali, Ahmed, Muhammad, each one sent, this one sent 5 dirhams, 5 dinars, here and there. He would say, this is how much this person sent before we give it to them. So tell us what's in the bag. He says, I have no clue what's in the bag. So they realize that he doesn't know what he's talking about. But he keeps insisting. He tells them, no, give it to me. They tell him, no, we can't. We're entrusted. We have amana. He tells them, I'm going to go to the Khalifa to put them in trouble. So he goes to Al-Mu'tamid al-Abbasi. He says, look, these people, they came and they're bringing amana for my brother. And I want to tell them that I am the one who, the heir of my brother. Of course, he does this twice. Once he goes to the wazir. The wazir tells him, listen, we don't believe that you're the heir of your brother because your brother, he never used to come out in public and he used to make such a claim. And we used to come after him. Allah would protect him. You're the first one who's doing something like this. So the Khalifa here, once again, the Khalifa, he didn't really know what was going on and he hadn't seen any signs of the Mahdi yet. But later on, Ja'far, he comes and he tells them and to try to get Imam al-Mahdi in trouble. But before that, he's worried about the money. He says, tell them to give me the money. They tell him, listen, we have to deliver an amana. He tells him, leave them. They have to deliver an amana. You can't come and abuse them. They deliver it to the rightful person. So these people, they leave. Now Imam al-Mahdi, he sends a khadim. As they're leaving Samarra, a khadim comes and he calls them by their names, each one, and he tells them. They tell him, are you our master? He says, no, I am the servant of your master. They say, we went and we saw a young child who was around the age of 5. He was wearing something green, and his face was shining like the moon, and he began to speak to us. He began to speak to us. He tells us exactly what's in the bag and who it's from. So they say we became very happy. And then he tells them, this is the last time you bring khums and amana to Samarra. Later on, you bring it to Uthman ibn Sa'id in Baghdad. And this is the last time you will see me. There's going to be letters that are exchanged, and they leave. They leave. Now Ja'far, because the Imam didn't allow him to lead the prayer, and because he wasn't able to take the money from those people that came from Qom, he goes to the authorities. He tells them there's a child in the house of the Imam. There's a child in the house of Al-Askari. They rush with their soldiers. They rush in and they begin to search the house. They don't see any child anymore. They don't see any sign anymore. Here, Imam al-Mahdi had left. He had left. Now, did he leave through the sardab? Did he leave through the main door? They were not able to see him, and Allah protected him. He left. He left, and the only person left in the house is Narjis, or Sayqal. Her name is Sayqal. They arrest her. They arrest her, and they begin to interrogate her. They begin to ask her, where is he? Did you have a child? She says, I don't know what you're talking about. I never had a child. Here, it's called a white lie, but this is halal and this is wajib to protect the life of the Imam. She says, I don't know what you're talking about. Now here, either she makes them think or they believe that she's pregnant, because they think that, there's no child that we knew of, and how could we have missed? We had spies in the house. How could we have missed the child? So she might be pregnant with the child. So what they do is they take her in the house of the Khalifa, and they imprison her for 2 years. For close to 2 years, they imprison her. Then later on, they get preoccupied. The brother of the Khalifa dies. There's another rebellion. The wazir dies. The judge dies. And several things going on until they release her. They release her. So this was with the death of Imam al-Hasan, Al-Askari. That was the day of the beginning of the Ghaybat al-Sughra. And Imam al-Mahdi, he tells those people from Qom, he tells them, now you will go to Uthman ibn Sa'id and it will be in Baghdad. Inshallah, in the next session, we're going to talk about the events that took place in the Ghaybat al-Sughra. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa ala alihi al-Tahirin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.